The research that we decided to conduct was the causes and effects of chronic absenteeism. I'm Jason Martin. Amanda Martin also helped team up with this. A little bit of the background information. Students must be consistent in school attendance in order to learn. Students' attendance is a serious issue for many school systems. Basically, the school that I work for, the middle school, and the school that she works for, the elementary school, we work in the same county. Our two schools, even though they come from different backgrounds, one on one end of the county, hers is on the other end, we have very different demographics, yet we both work with schools that are rewarded for good grades, great attendance, stuff like that. And the rest of our county is trying to catch up with that. So the overlying question was this: what is it that sets our schools apart whenever there's schools in my end of the county that have the same demographics, yet they're not scoring as high as us, versus hers on her end and they're not scoring as high either? So we wanted to question that kind of fundamentally and find out what we could figure with the data that we've concluded. The research question: do factors such as socioeconomic status and ethnicity impact student attendance at school? Here's the deal. This is one of those questions where if you work in education, you're like, yeah, duh, it probably does. But what we found through all this data crunching and research is that you have to look a little bit deeper. It's kind of like we've been looking at through the wrong lens, so to speak. In order to combat chronic student attendance, teachers and school districts must understand why the absences are occurring. It's more than just, okay, this group is missing Y, this group's missing Y, this group's solid, we're good with them. You have to be able to ultimately develop a deeper relationship with these kids, from teacher to student, student to even principal. What are the things, the intangibles that we are doing in our schools that maybe other schools are not? I think data can help us have a better understanding, but in order for us to find out how articulate we are with helping, boost positive scores, what is it that we're doing and what trends are we seeing from the data that some of these other schools may not be seeing? Then you can be able to combat that situation once you know what you're up against.
Prior to compiling our data at our respective schools, we did research from some of the leading experts in the field of education who have also conducted research on our topic of chronic absenteeism. And some of the biggest findings that we were able to locate were, first, the definition of chronic absenteeism. Most of the research that we found, they stated that chronic absenteeism is defined as missing 10% or more of the school year, and that can also be converted into 18 days of the school year being missed due to chronic absenteeism. The causes of chronic absenteeism can range from excused absences or unexcused absences, but of course those causes are quite varied. The causes also range from student factors to parental factors. The student factors are also very varied. Sometimes fear, anxiety, students having negative relationships with their teachers, negative relationships with other students can hinder children from wanting to go to school, and even safety concerns. Maybe they don't feel safe due to bullying or other things of that nature, or just the school in general, the environment doesn't feel safe to them, may hinder them or cause them to want to miss school. The parental factors were very interesting for us to identify. One of the biggest things that we located was that if parents value education, their students are more likely to be in school. And if parents didn't believe that education was very important or should be a vital part of their child's life, students were more likely to be absent from school. Another thing that we located under the causes is that low-income families miss school more often, whether that be because job situations, transportation issues, it all stems from low socioeconomic status. And then again, low-income communities of various ethnicities are at a higher risk of chronic absenteeism, and that's some of the biggest findings that we were able to locate from our literature reviews. The effects of chronic absenteeism are numerous. Students who are chronically absent may have slower brain development, miss critical instruction at school because they're not here to receive that, and teachers don't have the time with their demands that they have on them already to go back and reteach. They do what they can, but when students are chronically absent, they're missing critical instruction each and every day that they're gone. And then, of course, that ultimately leads to academic failure. And then along with that, all of those factors contribute to higher dropout rates in those students as they get older, and then lowered success into adulthood. A lot of those students don't continue education for a multitude of reasons, but they're not able to prosper in adulthood because they don't have the skills that are necessary to be successful. I also want to talk to you about our methods that we use in conducting our research. As Jason already stated, we both work at two different schools within the same county. I teach at an elementary school and he teaches at a middle school, and we were able to pull data from both of our schools to do some research about chronic absenteeism. The elementary school includes 617 students, and our demographics are as follows. We have 82% white students at our elementary school. We have 9% Hispanic Latino, 1% African American, 2% Asian, and then we have 6% who are 2 or more race categories. At the middle school, their demographics are a little different. They have 602 students, but within that, 45% of those students are white, 7% are African American, and then they have a few more of the categories represented, but very, very few in number. Less than 1% of their population is Asian, American Indian, Alaskan Native, Pacific Islander, and all of that is represented by less than 1%, but they do have students within those race categories in their school. Then this school is also 41% Hispanic Latino, which is interesting because the school is almost split. They have 45% Caucasian or white students and then 41% Hispanic Latino. And then the final of that number is 6% of their students are 2 or more race categories. So obviously the student population at both schools is varied when it comes to student ethnicities and backgrounds. So we were able to pull the student attendance records at both of our schools, and we analyzed those in order to identify students who were chronically absent. From that, we cross-referenced the free and reduced lunch list, and we also were able to look at student ethnicities that when students register, their parents enter what their ethnicities are, and we were able to pull data from that to cross-reference. And we were able to identify students within all of those categories that were classified as both chronically absent, free reduced lunch, and then and/or the ethnicity categories. In addition, like I said, chronically absent students qualifying for free and reduced lunch were also identified. That was critical in understanding demographics as far as their socioeconomic status of the students. Teachers are also surveyed at both schools in order to find their attitudes and any insights that they had toward the subject of chronic absenteeism. And some of the questions that we asked our teachers was, do you feel that chronic absenteeism is a problem in your classroom? We also were asking what they felt were the causes of chronic absenteeism, and then of course the effects of chronic absenteeism on students.
So after taking in all the account with the data, this is the results. This is what we've come up with. This is where we were leaning as well. I'll get into that in a second. Results are as follow. From this point on, we are going at the figures, adding both schools together. So now, it's my school and her school combined for a total of 1,219 students. So of those 1,219 students, 147 students were identified as chronically absent. Of the 147 students that are considered chronically absent, 111 of them were categorized as Caucasian. 111 out of 147. Among those students, 81 of them were considered low socioeconomic status, which is a very large percentage of that group. Among the 147 chronically absent students, only 30 were Hispanic or Latino. We were a little shocked by that number. Of those, all 30 were of low socioeconomic status. Of the 71 teacher surveys that we distributed, a whopping 23 of them came back. But from those results, 57% of the teachers believe that socioeconomic status causes lower student attendance. And like I said in the beginning, duh, if you've been in education long enough, you're going to consider the socioeconomic status. But we're digging deeper here. However, 91% did not believe that ethnicity is a cause of student attendance, lower student attendance. So essentially, we thought that number would be a lot lower. But of the people who turned in these surveys, they had an idea too. But we can't just throw accusations. We have to find more concrete figures and numbers. Some of the do factors, yes, socioeconomic status plays a factor. Ethnicity also plays a factor. However, we were both pretty impressed with the numbers as far as us being surprised how significant socioeconomic status matters in this equation. I think it's fair to say neither one of us thought that the socioeconomic status mattered as much as it did. I feel like now in education, we're so fixated on fixing the ethnicity gap, we kind of overlook the socioeconomic status. Yes, they do go hand in hand, but not exactly, because the figures we have with the overwhelming number of Caucasians. So this has kind of flipped the script a little bit. Ethnicity does not seem to be a significant factor when compared to socioeconomic status. The connection between ethnicity and socioeconomic status and student attendance, it's there. But again, we were shocked at just how compelling the evidence concludes. And it's not just our evidence. You know, the survey also said that, the teachers agreed that socioeconomic status does play a part. We figured that it would be a significant factor, but not as significant, and the research also shows it as well. What should be done to improve chronic absenteeism among students? This is the intangibles, in my opinion. And looking at the success that my school has had, looking at the success that her school has had, and versus looking at other schools in the county who are catching up and doing well, but trying to achieve the status that we've gotten, we have a lot of extracurricular programs that I think benefit us greatly. We have a lot of different opportunities for kids to feel involved. And one of the things that both our schools have said in the past, our principals, they pride themselves in saying, if a child in this school is not committed to something other than just the academics, that was their choice. We have so many different avenues for our kids to feel involved, to be a part of this community, and we're constantly adding to it and trying to tweak and change and critique things to get the kids to be involved. When you feel involved, when you take ownership of it, you attend more. It's that simple. And I think we do a great job with that. The research conducted in this project matched the findings within literature review. I also do want to make one other point too about how students do feel more involved. I think from this point on, and I've got a workshop coming up in my own school that I'm leading, I'm going to use this data and I'm going to project this and challenge the other teachers. Yes, we're doing a good job at getting people involved, but I think we go in with the mindset saying, how are we going to get those ethnicities involved as well? How are we going to get this sector of kids, this ethnicity to be involved? How can we help them? How can their grades improve? When in fact, when you look at the data, you got to follow the money. The economic disadvantageous people, the students that we have, it's not discriminated by what color they are. The overwhelming number of Caucasians proves that. So I think we need to go at it from a different standpoint, as in saying, how can we help the economically disadvantaged kids? How can we positively reach the parents? How can we get that connection and that relationship, not just with the student, but also have that communication established with the parents or the guardians involved? We've got to make sure that those kids are not forgotten. And it's not just the color of their skin.